someone like Rick Warren, I think 4 years ago, might have fallen into a label like the religious right. He was certainly doing some work within Republican circles to try to angle to be a religious advisor that Republican politicians would rely on. And before the election in November of that year, he sent out an email that went to a couple 100,000 pastors that listed what he said were the 5 non-negotiable issues for Christians in that election. Those issues were abortion, gay marriage, human cloning, euthanasia, and stem cell research, which is a fairly small subset of issues there. I had the chance to ask him about this last fall. Before I even finished the question, he stopped me and said, "That was wrong. That was absolutely wrong. It's not that I don't care about those issues anymore, but it was wrong of me to imply that those are the only issues that matter to Christians and to evangelicals in particular." Lastly, I would just say that it's important as we're looking at this time, this particular snapshot in time of our religion, politics, and where they intersect, to remember that we've been at this point before. Moderate evangelicals are not a new species that just developed. They've been around for a long time, and in fact, it seems to be on the rise 30, 35 years ago in the early 1970s. And they were very active opposing the war in Vietnam, somewhat less active, but still quite vocal in the civil rights movement. And when a very young Jim Wallace started out, seems to be forming coalitions, both with more kind of establishment evangelicals, the Billy Graham era and community, but also with their peers in the more mainline Protestant denominations. And it was really the failure to form coalitions in that group with younger evangelicals and new evangelicals that I think allowed the religious right to become as powerful as it did. There's no question that the religious right would have existed regardless of what happened in other parts of the evangelical world. But the fact that mainline Protestants kind of shied away from working with evangelicals, whether over theological differences or over the idea that evangelicals, as the stereotype goes, were just too conservative, too opposed to modernity was one of the knocks, too anti-woman was certainly another fear. And that secular liberals said, "We don't want anything to do with you." That had an impact and meant that while liberal evangelicals continued to exist, they were kind of off on their own. They were fragmented and had a hard time gaining the prominence that they might have if they had gotten support from other areas of the left. Now is another time when we're starting to see evangelicals coming together on more progressive issues and they're starting to gain more prominence. The question now is whether other folks in what we think of broadly, I think too broadly as the religious left, will form alliances with them or continue to stay fragmented. And more key, whether the secular left will also see them as legitimate partners on issues that they should have in common, but it may be very easy to say, well, at the end of the day, we just think we're too far apart. And with that, I'll just spend a minute addressing Will's last question of whether, I think he posed it, whether we will see a rise of religion on the left or whether we should depoliticize religion. And I don't think that that's the choice. I think that's a false choice. It's not an unusual way to pose the question, though. Certainly what we've seen in the last few years is the assumption on the left by a lot of funders, a lot of people who are looking out at the new world of the left and deciding where to give their money, that the way to get involved is to fund institutions that will go after the religious right or will take down the religious right, without realizing that one of the ways to make the religious right less powerful is to make other religious voices more heard, to give them more of a platform, and to really diversify the models that there are for who is religious, to challenge this idea that religion can only be conservative, it can only have one face. And it's a bit of a counterintuitive way to think about it, but I really argue that one of the ways to take religion off the table politically, one of the ways to neutralize its effect as a politically divisive tool is by engagement on the left, and by therefore changing a world in which religion is assumed to be Republican, assumed to be conservative. And once that's not the image that voters have and that society has, then candidates and parties and people are forced to talk about actual issues. Talk about the things that, whether you're religious or you're secular, voters care about the economy right now. And as EJ said, these other issues come to the fore, but as long as we're able to associate religion just with one side, it will be used to divide people. And I believe that the only way to get past that is to really have engagement, have a diversity of views.